Six Flags Qiddiya in Saudi Arabia, in partnership with Intimate Amusement Rides out of Liechtenstein, have made their official unveiling for Falcon's Flight, which is set to be the world's largest roller coaster, absolutely destroying all other roller coaster records. This will be the world's tallest, the world's fastest, and the world's longest. And it's not even close. 640 feet tall, 13,123 feet long, and 157 miles per hour. But Falcon's Flight is more than just its records. It looks to be an actually legitimate good roller coaster. Rides like Top Thrill Dragster and Qiddiya are loved because of their height and speed, but they obviously lack in duration. Falcon's Flight is an absurdly long ride, really one that's going to feel like 3 different roller coasters put together. So in this video, we're going to dive into this thing, talk about each of these different elements as well as the train, which was just unveiled at IAAPA 2023. It looks awesome. We're going to get into that in a second, and then I'll just share some general thoughts at the end because this is really just an unprecedented attraction. We've never seen anything else like this. So, in case you're unfamiliar, Six Flags Qiddiya is going to be the newest theme park to open up just outside of Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. The park is currently under construction with no confirmed opening date, but this isn't one of those projects that just never makes it off the ground. As of right now, when this video is being made, construction is full steam ahead. This roller coaster that we're looking at right now seems to be already like halfway built. It's insane and said to be the new anchor attraction of this park, which is housing many other great looking rides too. You can see right here what looks to be another Intamin roller coaster, one with a top hat. There's a Vekoma tilt coaster. We just learned that there's going to be a GCI wooden coaster there. Some other really great looking rides. But let's be honest, none of it's going to compare to Falcon's Flight. What makes this ride so unique is that one, it is going to sprawl all throughout the park. So everywhere you walk, you're going to see this thing. And then off in the distance, you're going to be able to see how it just shoots you up on top of this quarry wall and then drops you off the side of it. So like, you know when Iron Rattler does that at Fiesta Texas? Take that but make it like 6 times the size. It's absolutely absurd. Let me tell you, it felt that much more surreal seeing the actual ride vehicle in person. You can see the lead car of each train is just going to seat 2 passengers. That's because the front of it just has this amazing looking falcon design. The theme for this ride originates from Saudi's tradition of falconry. You can see the glowing eyes. They also have LEDs on the side of the train. From what I understand, they can change the colors whenever they want, which should be really cool looking, especially at night. In total, there'll be 14 passengers per train. After the lead car, there'll be 3 other cars and each one will hold 4 passengers, still 2 across, but they're going to be staggered seating. The big advantage for that is the view, right? So think about like Diamondback or Shambhala. It kind of feels like 4 across, but the seats are spread out a bit. This is going to be a little less dramatic than that, but still the same idea. But they're utilizing the same seating design that we've seen on Tutatis, Taiga, that next generation over-the-shoulder lap bar. But after sitting in it, I did notice a couple slight differences. First, unless I'm going crazy, this seat feels lower than any of the other Intamin LSM coasters I've done. And one way I could tell is because the seat felt arched back just slightly. Like when you take a seat, your whole body slides back because it's at an angle. You really feel like you're in there. And when I pulled down the lap bar, it looked and felt the exact same as Velocicoasters. It's got the 2 handlebars on there. I believe it's carbon fiber. And then of course we can't ignore the big windshield that's in front of you. It didn't bother me as much seeing in person. Like you can still see very clearly out front. It's so that you don't have to wear safety goggles on the ride, which is just kind of mind-blowing, but each of the cars are going to have that windshield. What I'm curious in seeing is if it feels like the speed is going to be dampened or diminished because of the windshield. Like, do you still get that wind in your face? I imagine so, but maybe not as dramatically. It's going to be interesting to see. And lastly, before we move on to the layout, you wheel assembly nerds? Yeah, they're huge. Biggest wheels I've ever seen on any roller coaster. I believe they said they're 16 inches in diameter. Absolutely insane. Now, we don't have an idea yet of what the station or how the theming is going to look, but when you roll out, it looks like you're going to take a right-hand turn and then start up your lift, which is going to be an LSM lift, one of 3 sets on the ride, and each gets progressively faster. So this first one kind of reminds me of Maverick, where it's a launch, but not really. It's kind of just a way to get you up to the top. They don't have a top speed listed yet for this, but if you've ridden Maverick, I imagine it's not going to feel too terribly different, but this is definitely going to be taller. As of now, we don't have an exact height, but just looking at the animation, I would guess it's just shy of 200 feet. Like the first third of this layout is very much giving me Conda vibes. Conda's about 164 feet. Your top speed at the bottom of that drop is 70 miles per hour. So unless we hear otherwise, I think it's a pretty safe bet to assume that we can have stats around that vicinity. We have a curved drop whipping you down to the left. I imagine you're going to get some good airtime there in the back. First element is an airtime hill. In this animation, it looks drawn out. We'll have to wait and see if it feels that way when you're actually on it. They then throw you into a twisted hill. That should be fun. And then you have this kind of long drawn out turn, actually passing underneath the bottom of this massive airtime hill that we're going to get to later. You hit this wall stall like sideways sideways bank, very much in the style of what Pantheon and Tutatis do. There's another airtime hill, a bank curve, and then you hit your flat section where you'll begin your ascent up to the top. So that's what I call the first third of the ride. Most other roller coasters would probably turn around, head back at this point, but for Falcon's Flight, this is the warm-up, and that's what's absolutely insane about this attraction. You hit your boost and start climbing. Falcon's Flight uses over 700 LSM motors. That's about 6 times the amount used for Velocicoaster. So there's a lot of them, and they're extremely powerful. Unlike some other manufacturers which have multiple sets of stators on the track, Intamin likes to use just one straight line, so you think about like Gotham City Escape, Maverick, any of those, you just have one long stretch of super powerful fins to shoot you down the launch track. According to Intamin, you're going to reach 100 miles per hour at the top of this cliff, but what's wild is because of this turn to get to the top, you lose a lot of that speed. So it's going to be pretty brief that you reach there, but I think that's just going to be such a surreal sensation going all the way up there. When you make this turn to face back towards the park, the view is going to be wild. Like you are so high up there. It's assumed that at this point you're at your maximum height of 640 feet, meaning 640 feet above the lowest point of the start of the ride. So it's unlikely that this cliff itself is 640 feet tall because it's going to start gradually sloping upwards, at least until the very end. Then it's a lot more dramatic. So therefore, this drop is not going to be 640 feet. And for the middle of the ride, Falcon's Flight has some fun little maneuvers up here. The scariest of which is easily this outer bank that does over the edge. Everything else stays on top, but you have this one little section where you go out and man, that is just going to be scary. I think that's going to be an underrated moment on this ride. You pass through a bank curve, a little bunny hop, and then turn into a flat section of track where you're going to then drop into your main descent. I think it's been interesting hearing some of the comments of what people have been talking about for this upper section. I think it's actually really cool that they have this in here because I think it's going to build anticipation and it's going to break up the really intense moments. I like that this is coming right after a 100-mile-per-hour launch where you slow it down and then you do something different and then we're going to pick back up. There's really some cool diversity in this layout and it's all without ever going upside down one time. No inversions on Falcon's Flight. Personally, I don't miss them. I don't think it needs them, though 100-mile-per-hour Mosasaurus roll does sound pretty epic, but anyways, this drop is going to be surreal. That cliff is huge and it looks to be a vertical descent, or at least pretty close. In terms of an actual size of this drop, my guess would be around the 300-foot range, at least until it pulls out and starts sloping a bit more gradually downwards. That's when you hit your third and final launch, boosting you to 157 miles per hour, 7 miles per hour faster than the current record holder, Formula Rossa. I just find this part of the ride super fascinating because we've never really had a downward launch before. But it's cool, it's so that you can clear this enormous airtime hill. Now, like the first hill on the ride, we do not have an exact height here. However, if you're reaching speeds of 157 miles per hour and clearing this, that means you're definitely over 400 because King Dakar does 128. I would guess around the 500-foot range. Not as tall as the cliff edge, but still taller than any other roller coaster in the world. If true, then that would mean that this is the biggest drop on the ride, not the one off the cliff edge. Now, the question everyone's wondering, are you going to get airtime going over this hill? I think so, but not a lot. Like, I'm not expecting anything crazy. The craziest part of this hill is just going to be about being so high off the ground. Like, I'm thinking about the maintenance workers who have to do track walks and inspections. How on earth do you get up here to do that? That's got to be insane and really scary. I want to do it. But I think plummeting back down towards the ground here is going to be wild. I don't think this drop is going to be as steep as the main one that we just went off the cliff with, but I'd at least expect some air. But overall, I don't feel like Falcon's Flight is about the airtime. It's about the height, speed, and length. That's what's the huge selling point here. At the bottom of this airtime hill, you whip into a really low to the ground turn, and this is when you start spiraling like throughout the park. You actually fly over what looks to be an F1 track, so there's gonna be race cars flying by. You pass under a bridge, S-curve to the left, massive turnaround here. If this isn't giving Formula Rossa vibes, then I don't know what is. I actually think it's gonna do a pretty good job maintaining its speed. You're gonna pass over the Six Flags Qiddiya sign, so when you walk into the park, you're gonna see this thing going by. It's gonna be so cool. And then I believe that's your final turn back into the brake run. So it's a very long experience, super cool. I'm interested in knowing how much speed you're gonna have before you hit those brakes. Will you still be going over 100 miles per hour? Maybe, maybe not. I wouldn't be surprised if it ends up being like 80, something like that. Still a lot of momentum. All in all, it is about 1.5 times longer than Steel Dragon 2000, which is the current record holder for the world's longest roller coaster. And I don't even think it's gonna be close as far as which is the better ride. I just find this project so fascinating fascinating. Like, it easily has to be the most expensive roller coaster ever built. Like, there's just none other that could come close. Like, I know Guardians is the current record holder, but that's like really well themed, and they had to do a lot of R&D because of the rotating technology, new trains, never been done before. Intamin obviously had to design new trains for this thing, but the core LSM technology has been done many times. Just sheerly looking at the amount of steel used for this project, the amount of track being produced, it's absolutely nuts. In the press conference, the people from Six Flags Qiddiya said that when they approached Intamin back in like 2017, 2018, their goal was to break all records and just do something completely never seen before, and they succeeded. I look forward to seeing more construction updates as it progresses along. Let me know down in the comments below what you think of Falcon's flight. If you're new to the channel, I'd love if you could subscribe. We do theme park and roller coaster videos from places all across the world, so be sure to stay tuned for more. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.